Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We're going to have a look at some of the changes that are in the update Firebirds update that we didn't have a look at on the dev server or have been recently added in the changelogs. As always, if you enjoy this type of content, make sure to subscribe and let's get started. The first one is actually coming from this custom battle. So I did this to kind of test out my frames and how everything's going with that. It's getting there, but the main thing to look at is this hit analysis button. So what you can do after a battle is you can actually have a look at all of the destructions that you did against a target. So this is where I shot a panther with a T-54. It actually saves absolutely everything that you've done in the battle, so you can work out where you should have shot the vehicle and also where you should have, maybe changed your shot, even down to certain machine guns, which is kind of cool. And here you can see it tells you on the right hand side what you shot and also what you were using. I think overall this is really cool. And then you can also see the enemy hits. So when you're actually hit by a target and when it destroyed you or did significant damage. So you can work out how you died in a battle. And I think overall that's actually really cool. It even turns the vehicle to where you were looking and also basically shows what you were doing at that time. And I think in general, that's just awesome. It's really cool that they've added this feature, and it doesn't just show the ones that you actually died from. It even shows all of the shots that you've taken, including the ones that didn't do a crazy amount of damage. So that's awesome. That's absolutely amazing. This is just my custom hangar, by the way, so that's why you see these vehicles like this. But also, if you want to see this feature in a different place, what you can actually do is you can go to, let's say, the hit analysis or protection analysis here, and you can open a hit file, and this is where all of the stuff will be, right? So you can actually bring in a replay and see where you've shot and where others shot, and you can push from there. So I think overall that's actually really cool and really interesting. So let's have a chat about certain other parts that have been fully added. The graphics update is here. So we have DirectX or Direct3D 12 Beta, which has been added. You also have new anti-aliasing, the FSR, the TSR, and I believe the DLAA stuff, which has been added around too. Then also, you have access now to the ray tracing options. Now, you can see here, I've been running this on medium. I actually went out and got myself a 4070 Ti Super, because I'm planning on doing some stuff with it in the future. So this right now, with this setup plus the options here running at 2K, basically what I've personally found is it can't keep a stable 120 FPS, but it's stable around 100 FPS on that. So take with that what you will, because obviously this is in beta. It will hopefully get better with time, but it very much is something which is very resource intensive. Then also they've added the motion blur option, which you can see here, and you can also cancel the motion blur in the camera. I've got to be honest, this isn't actually that bad, and just to kind of show you the differences between kind of the different levels of ray tracing and also different levels of motion blur. I'm not actually sure if it's going to come through in the setup for motion blur, but what we'll do is I'll turn off ray tracing and then I'll put it on ultra, and hopefully my machine doesn't burn to a crisp, but you get the idea. So this is what it looks like in terms of being off, and then if we have a look here, this is what it is at full. And as I said, when it comes to a lot of other parts of it, I have been able to run the game at a pretty decent frame rate, but at full ray tracing, you can see we're back to about 60 FPS, and also there's like little chunks that it misses, but this is pretty much what it looks like. And also when you fire, it makes a huge difference because it simulates the actual kind of rounds and also the shadows that the rounds create. when you fire. It looks absolutely beautiful, but the performance here is kind of crazy, and as I said, I'm sure that it'll get better in time, but at the moment, it's not there yet. And I now have a pretty high-end card, and I'm sure a lot of you guys don't, so it's going to be pretty rough in terms of it. So I think a nice compromise is this. You know, the grass textures aren't the best, but overall I can still keep a 120 FPS with this, and I think that's kind of the way to go. FPS is obviously very important to these things. So if we add motion blur, just to show you what it looks like without motion blur, as I said, I don't know if it's going to come through very well in terms of this, but this is it without motion blur. So you can see everything stays pretty static, everything stays pretty still. And then if you turn motion blur on, guess what? It adds motion blur. But to be honest, I thought it would be a lot worse than it is. The motion blur isn't actually really that bad. You can't really see it massively in terms of the game. You see it more in the camera. But I believe you can turn it off in the camera, but it's really not that bad. So maybe if you were like going fast in a battle like this, it's going to be pretty rough. But a little bit of motion blur might not actually be a bad idea. So that to me isn't... I thought it was going to be way more aggressive than it is. But yeah, you can see here you can actually cancel the camera motion blur. Another part to also talk about is the fact that everything now has a description, so you know what everything does. The only parts that don't are stuff like this, where, you know, you can't go over it, but they do leave a description in the changelogs, so you can kind of see how all of that works, which is pretty cool. They have added in some profile changes, but I have to emphasize, when it comes to the profile changes, they are not finished. So basically what they are doing is they're doing it piecemeal. So this is what the profile looks like right now. The statistics, service medal achievements, all of this stuff hasn't really changed. The only part that is different is obviously this kind of primary page, and all you can do really is change your favorite mode. If you don't change your favorite mode, then it will default to the mode that you've played the most. But for example, for me, I could like put any of these on, and it kind of shows all of your general statistics, and look at that score. It's kind of crazy. But do understand that this is something that will change over time. So this is something that will move about. And if we have a look at somebody else like Dog, that you can see here, it shows the favorite mode, ground realistic battles, and then also you can see the other stats that are here. So that's pretty much how it's all set up, and that's how it's all going with that. And understand, as I said, that's a first step. Very much like a lot of other things in this, such as like the ray tracing. It's in beta, it's the first step, they will improve it. Same with the DirectX 12 and all of that stuff. Talking about stuff that isn't in beta anymore, the good old Coastal for France. So Coastal machines are fully available to everybody for France, so you can play them whenever you want, which is really cool, and that is pretty awesome. Another thing that's also changed is the audio of the game. So instead of having to worry about the dynamic range of audio, they've actually improved it. So basically, the dynamic range means the difference or the range between the loudest and quietest sounds has been increased. So therefore, it'll be easier for you to tell where targets are. Basically, the readability and clarity of important sounds, such as sounds of engines of enemy vehicles, has been made better. So being able to hear where things are should be a lot easier. I would also say if you have access to 7.1 surround sound for your headset, which is what I'm using here, highly recommend it. Really helps in terms of detecting where your enemies are. There's also another audio option which is going to help people out quite a lot in terms of the game. And what they are doing is actually really cool. So, for example, for bombs, which are coming in, which, you know, a lot of vehicles do have bombs and do kind of hammer time people with them. basically you will be able to hear them a lot earlier than they come in. I didn't realize you can't actually do bombs. That's kind of weird. But anyway, the fact is, with the aerial bombs, they now make more noise in addition to the whistling when approaching a guy on the ground. So if somebody is bombing you from a really high height, whether it's something like a PE-8 or a Lincoln or other vehicle, you can hear it from miles away. So it means that you can reposition, it means that you can smoke. It basically acts a lot more like an LWRs on something like the Black Knight, for example, than others. So it just gives you more prepared time to be able to deal with what's going on. So for me, I think that's really good. They've also changed certain light amplification night devices. I actually found this on a few vehicles. For example, I think I got the Alouette, where it just gave me a bunch of stuff because they removed the NVDs from it. So yeah, it actually gave me a bit of a bonus to getting access to the Mi-24. Basically, they've removed NVDs on those vehicles, so you don't have to research it. They've refunded people the Golden Eagles and the SL on it. So you can see here, for me, all of the NVDs that I'd researched, I nearly got 2 million SL back. And also, they added some secondary armaments to vehicles, which is what you see here. So this is actually really cool. It means that you don't have to worry about grinding NVDs anymore. They are default. The one thing they did do, though, is they did keep thermals non-defaulted, so you still have to grind them out. But for a vehicle like the T72, you can see there's no NVD modification anymore. For a vehicle like the T80, which has kind of like a dual stage thing going on with it, if you remember, is it the T80B that has this? Yeah, so you can see that you have the Contact 1 that you can add in, and then also the T80U, you have its thermal package, the NVD upgrade, but you don't have the NVD before it now. So now you just get it stock. So everybody gets stock setups on that. They have also removed illumination shells from night battles, so this is probably why they've made this change. But also it's, you know, still a pretty positive change. Another thing they've also changed, which hopefully is positive, we'll have to see how it goes, they have supposedly fixed tows. And not just tows, but also other ones as well. We'll just use the iTow here as an example, but basically the tow family of ATGMs, the 9M114120s and the ZT3, the flight model and autopilot has been updated. So the probability of self-oscillation occurring after fast movement of line of sight is lowered. So what this means is it should follow the center a lot better than it did before. And you can see there that that was pretty good, right? So there's a lot less overcorrection. And that was the problem with these missiles, and also a lot of air-to-air missiles too. The overcorrection that they had was really bad. So, you know how we talked about the Flak-Panzer, and we talked about the OSA, where basically those vehicles had issues where it couldn't follow like the center. Probably the T-90 is not the best example, but now the missile follows the center of the targeter much better than it did before. There is still some oscillation, but it's nowhere near as bad, and that is just so much better. So it'll be easier to use these ATGMs again, and also hopefully they won't run into the ground too early from it. So that's really good, really positive for these things. I do want to point out one little thing that has also happened, which is with the SDKFZ 2344, my bad. The one which was a event vehicle. Well, I suppose a lot of them were event vehicles thinking about it. One of the problems that this vehicle used to have is the driver wouldn't get replaced after he was destroyed. So basically the vehicle couldn't move. So basically now you have the commander who can drive the vehicle. So if your driver gets destroyed, then you're still able to go, which is quite nice. That wasn't something that was happening too much. So let's talk about the RWR changes. This is something that I kind of left off for a while because of the fact that I wasn't too interested in going through them, because I knew they were going through a bunch of changes before they made it to the game. So in this section, we're going to talk about all of the RWR changes that have happened. By the way, a ton of vehicles have RWRs fully functional and fully working in their cockpit now. So if you're a simulator player or you really enjoy that type of kind of experience, it's really nice to see. Now, there's a huge list of these, MiG-21s, MiG-23s, MiG-29s, Su-17s, Su-24s, Su-25s, basically all of the American and also Soviet machines, and at the same time, you have all of the other kind of variants of those too. Pretty much every single vehicle, in terms of like maybe rank 7 to 8, has access to these features now, so you can actually see the RWRs working. So you see that little one there. They also added something to the zone, if you didn't know. So what you can see here is a part of the test drive, and you can see that's tracking me. So there you go. That's that little red light telling you it's being tracked. And they actually added an area of the test flight where you can actually learn how to defend yourself against SAMs which are firing at you. So you can see here we have 2 sets of SPAAs. They're locking onto me, and you can kind of test your RWR and work out how much they're going to track you, and they will actively fire upon you as well. So that's really cool, right? Now you can see the missile coming in here. So basically it's all about you and learning how to actually dodge these things and being able to move around. And I think that's pretty awesome, right? So that gives you kind of a way of testing yourself against the test drives, against the missiles that you usually face in Aerialistic. And if you want to find how you get access to that, they've added more options to the test flight. So if you go here, you can see spawn point, airfield, on glide path, enemy air defense zone, and then the 1 kilometer to 7 kilometer above the airfield. So you have way more options here. And then also you have high-low for the training targets that you want to face. The other part, which is also really cool, and this isn't just a test drive thing, this is also a battle thing. They have made it so before you spawn, you can pick the radar mode that you want to use, and then also the radar search mode and the scope scale too. So you don't have to fiddle around with your radars before the battle. You just need to use this menu and then just go in, which is fantastic. But let's talk about all of the RWR changes here, as I talked about. So the first one is the Buccaneer S2B. Its RWR, the ability to identify specific radar models, has been added, so that one actually got a buff. The ANAPR 25, 27, 32, and 36, so this affects stuff like the Phantoms, the F-104, the F-8, the F-105, and A4. The radar type of indication on the screen in accordance with frequency ranges E and G and I has been added, so this actually gives them a buff. The ANALR 56, so all of the variants, the 68, the 67, and also the 69. Artillery SPAAs are now identified as anti-aircraft artillery without identifying specific models, and the SAMs are identified as before. This is for pulse radars or fighters other than the F4, F5, MiG-21, and 23 are identified as pulse radars without identification of specific models, and the pulse Doppler fighter radars are identified as before. The JA and AJ-37 radar is recognized as the F-16, J-7 and J-8 radars are recognized as the MiG-21. The vehicles that use these RWRs are high-tier American ones, such as the F-14B, the F-16s, and the F-15s. And then you have the ANAPR 39 or variants. The fighter radars are not identified by specific models anymore, and the ZSU-23-4 is identified as a specific model. NATO air defense systems such as the Roland, the ITO, etc. can no longer be identified either. And this affects stuff like the AH-64A, the AH-1Z, and the A-129. The ANALR 46 or variants, the fighter radars and missile radars are identified as pulse and pulse Doppler without identifying specific models. The artillery SPAs are now identified as anti-aircraft artillery without identifying specific models as well, and this affects stuff like the F4E, the F5E, and the A7s. So you can see that there are some buffs and there are some nerfs there. If there is a specific vehicle that you are interested in or enjoy playing, it may be worth checking them out. A few little other changes to aircraft have also come in. There is a huge list of stuff that has been changed, but we covered a lot of them on the dev server. But one of the things we didn't look at is the Aviate BNA. This vehicle actually has a new engine now, the F402 RR408, so this has increased thrust, which is quite nice. And then also, at the same time, they have added something to the HS129s, which I just wanted to kind of show you, because I think in general, it's kind of cool. They've actually added EFS to these things, so improving their survivability, and also meaning that they need to be respaded, so people can code ducking. There's also some changes to Japanese guns, and also the good old the TISMA. They changed the amount of ammo the 37s get, so people are probably going to take the 45s more. They've also increased tracer visibility across the board, so it's just easier to see things that are being shot at you, which generally I think is quite cool. And one of the changes that they've made to research is they've actually made it so it's easier for you to grind through specific parts of tech trees. Now, I can't really show this very well because most of the tech trees I have pretty well grinded out, but there's probably an area where I can show it. But here we go. So you know how on the rank part it says rank 6 unlock progress 2 out of 4? You need 2 more vehicles of rank 5. So what would happen is if a vehicle got added in this rank for Italy, that would then go 2 out of 5 instead of 2 out of 4. So you'd have to research all of them or buy the premium to be able to go through. Now, with the new mechanics of these, so this, for example, you know how they added in this kind of like new feature a little bit ago where you can actually research past new vehicles and get the vehicle that you want before the time limit expires. This time limit also is for the number of vehicles that you need for that rank. So if this vehicle was at rank 5 and this you needed 5 vehicles to get to rank 6, what would end up happening is it could be skipped until after this time. So you can actually unlock the next rank before, you know, the time runs out. So I think generally that's actually really cool, and I'm very happy to actually see that. Another part for ships as well is the good old Myokos and the Haguro, which are in the tech tree right here. The Haguro is, the Myoko is the premium, and the Haguro is the standard tech tree one. With their 5-inch guns, the funny thing happened. There's been a few stat card fixes, but this one is just hilarious. So on the stat card, it said that the guns had a good old 4-3 second reload, but unfortunately in the game, it actually was 7.4 seconds. So they've married them up now, so now they actually say the right reloads, which is great. It's kind of weird how stuff like that happens. If you want a full list of all the changes for this update, I'll leave a link to them in the description. There's a ton of things that have changed in this update, and understand there is probably going to be some performance issues because of all the new graphics settings. There's going to have to be a lot of tweaking, a lot of moving around, and I already feel it with my system. So hopefully everything works for you. Hopefully everything goes well. And look after yourselves. Peace be with you. I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.